Have you ever wondered why you keep sabotaging your own happiness? Why you find yourself in the same toxic patterns, choosing the same kinds of people who hurt you, or feeling like no matter how much you achieve, there's still this hollow ache inside that whispers you're not enough? What if I told you that the reason you can't break free isn't because you're broken, but because you're living a lie so deeply embedded in your psyche that you mistake it for truth? Imagine for a moment that everything you believe about yourself, every fear that keeps you awake at night, every reason you hold back from love, success, or joy stems from a single moment in childhood when you learned the most devastating lesson of your life. Not through words, but through silence. Not through punishment, but through the absence of unconditional love. Carl Jung discovered that what we don't make conscious from our earliest years doesn't just fade away. It becomes the invisible architect of our adult suffering. Think about it. Why do you apologize for taking up space? Why do you dim your light when you enter a room? Why do you give until you're empty, love until you're exhausted, and achieve until you're burned out, yet still feel like you're pretending to be someone you're not? These aren't personality quirks. They are symptoms of a wound so profound that your entire identity formed around protecting it. Jung understood that childhood doesn't end when you grow up. It lives on as a psychological blueprint, a nervous system program that was written when you were too young to question it. Your brain, in its infinite wisdom, adapted to survive the emotional climate of your early years. If love came with conditions, you learned to earn it. If your feelings were met with rejection, you learned to hide them. If your authentic self was too much for the adults around you, you learned to become less. But here's what's terrifying. These adaptations don't feel like choices you made. They feel like who you are. The child who learned to be quiet to avoid conflict doesn't just choose silence as an adult. They become it. The child who discovered that being perfect brought praise doesn't just strive for excellence. They become terrified of making mistakes. Your survival strategies became your personality, and your personality became your prison. This is why personal growth feels like death. You're not just changing habits. You're questioning the very foundation of your identity. Every time you try to set a boundary, speak your truth, or prioritize your needs, something inside you screams that you're being selfish, that you're going to be abandoned, that you're not allowed to want what you want. That voice isn't your intuition. It's the guardian of the lie. Neuroscience now confirms what Jung intuited decades ago. Your brain literally wired itself around these early relational experiences. The neural pathways that fire when you encounter love, conflict, or judgment were carved deep in those formative years. So when you feel that familiar panic when someone seems upset with you, when you find yourself people-pleasing until you lose yourself, when you sabotage good things because you don't feel worthy of them, you're not being weak. You're being loyal to a program that was designed to keep a child safe. Jung called this split the beginning of the shadow. Everything we had to repress, deny, or hide to be accepted gets pushed into the darkness of our unconscious. Our anger, our needs, our sensitivity, our real voice, our authentic desires. We developed what he called a persona, a mask that could navigate the world safely. But every time we put on that mask, we abandoned a piece of our soul. The persona isn't fake, it's just incomplete. It's who we had to become to survive childhood with the least amount of rejection. The problem is that we grew up confusing the persona with our true self. We became adults who feel empty, exhausted, or completely unsure of who we really are beneath all the pleasing, achieving, or hiding. We became successful strangers to ourselves. What's most heartbreaking is that these patterns don't feel like defense mechanisms. They feel like personality. The child who suppressed their anger becomes the easygoing adult. The child who hid their sadness becomes the strong one everyone leans on. And the world rewards these performances. But underneath, there's a tension, a disconnection, because these traits aren't rooted in choice but in fear. Jung believed that when we lose contact with the totality of who we are, we also lose access to our inner guidance, what he called the self. Instead of living from within, we begin to live in reaction to what we think others want us to be. We become actors in our own lives, playing roles we never auditioned for, following scripts we never wrote. This disconnection sets the stage for the lie. Not spoken, but felt. A belief that lives beneath our confidence, beneath our success, beneath our self-doubt. And until we name it, it will continue to shape every relationship, every decision, every moment of joy or sorrow. The lie that made you forget who you were before you learned to be afraid. Maybe you recognize yourself in this. Maybe you're starting to see that the anxiety you feel when someone doesn't text back isn't really about them. It's about the time you learned that love could disappear without warning. Maybe you're beginning to understand that your perfectionism isn't about excellence. It's about the fear of being rejected for making mistakes. Maybe you're realizing that your people-pleasing isn't about being kind. It's about the terror of being seen as selfish or difficult. These patterns run deeper than conscious thought. They're embedded in your nervous system, in the way your body responds before your mind can process what's happening. When you feel that familiar tightness in your chest when someone raises their voice, when you find yourself shrinking in the presence of authority, when you automatically say yes when you mean no, you're not being weak. You're responding to ancient programming that once kept you safe. But what kept you safe as a child is now keeping you small as an adult. The very strategies that help you survive your early years are now preventing you from thriving in your adult life. The mask that protected you is now suffocating you. The persona that earned you love is now preventing you from feeling truly seen. This is the invisible prison that Jung spent his life helping people escape. Not through force, but through understanding. Not through judgment, but through compassion. Because the first step to freedom isn't fighting with your patterns. It's recognizing that they served a purpose. They weren't mistakes. They were adaptations. They were the best solutions a child could find to impossible problems. The ugliest lie they made you believe as a child wasn't a sentence. It wasn't shouted at you or written down. It was absorbed through 1,000 tiny moments when love felt conditional, when your authentic self was too much, too little, or simply not what was needed. The lie was this: you, as you are not enough to be loved. Not because someone told you directly, but because love, affection, and safety came with terms and conditions. You were rewarded for being quiet, punished for feeling too much, ignored when you were sad, or praised only when you succeeded. Maybe you learned that your emotions were inconvenient, that your needs were burdensome, that your voice was too loud or your presence too demanding. Slowly, subtly, you internalized the message: I must become someone else to be safe. This belief isn't just emotional, it's biological. Your body remembers what your mind forgot. You flinch before you speak your truth. You over-apologize, over-give, or over-adapt in relationships. You chase perfection like your life depends on it because, to your nervous system, it does. You fear being a burden, taking up space, or asking for what you need because somewhere deep inside, you're still that child who learned that love is earned, not given. But here's what will break your heart and set you free. This was never about you being flawed. It was about the adults around you not knowing how to meet your full humanity. They couldn't hold space for your big emotions because they were afraid of their own. They couldn't celebrate your authentic self because they had abandoned theirs. They couldn't love you unconditionally because they had never learned to love themselves that way. The tragedy is that you made their limitations mean something about your worth. You decided that if you could just be good enough, quiet enough, successful enough, you could earn the love that should have been yours simply for existing. You became a master of reading rooms, anticipating needs, and shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for your full expression. This is the root wound that Jung's work helps us face. Not just to remember it, but to reclaim the parts of ourselves we had to abandon to survive. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to be afraid. It's about integrating the angry child, the sensitive one, the loud one, the scared one. These aren't weaknesses to overcome. They are keys to who you really are. The lie manifests differently for everyone, but its core remains the same. Some people become overachievers, believing that if they just accomplish enough, they'll finally be worthy of love. Others become people pleasers, convinced that if they just make everyone happy, they'll be safe from rejection. Some become perfectionists, terrified that any mistake will expose their fundamental inadequacy. Others become invisible, believing that taking up space is dangerous. But beneath all these different strategies lies the same wound, the belief that you are not inherently worthy of love, that your value is conditional, that you must earn your place in the world, that who you are, at your core, is somehow wrong or too much or not enough. This wound shapes everything. The way you enter relationships, already brace for rejection. The way you approach opportunities, convinced you don't deserve them. The way you treat yourself with the same conditional love you learn to expect from others. The way you move through the world, constantly scanning for signs that you're about to be found out, rejected, or abandoned. If this is stirring something deep inside you, if you're recognizing patterns you've carried for years, please don't keep this journey to yourself. Hit that subscribe button not just for more content, but because you're ready to stop living someone else's version of your life. Join thousands of others who are choosing healing over hiding, authenticity over approval. Your transformation could inspire someone else to start their own journey back to themselves. Because when you heal, you don't just change your own life, you change the lives of everyone around you. Jung didn't see healing as fixing what's broken. He saw it as becoming whole. In his view, healing wasn't about self-improvement. It was about self-recovery. He often warned that modern people don't suffer from a lack of technique, but from a lack of meaning. Many of our emotional struggles aren't rooted in dysfunction, but in disconnection from our feelings, from our inner voice, from something larger than the persona we created. True healing means returning to the self, the deep inner center of wholeness that includes both light and shadow. And that kind of healing doesn't make you someone new. It helps you remember who you were before you had to forget. The process he called individuation is the slow, courageous integration of all the parts you left behind. You heal when you stop fighting with those parts of yourself. When you stop trying to be good and start being real. That's how you unlearn the lie. Not through logic, but through lived experience. By allowing yourself to take up space, to rest, to say no, to express the very emotions you once silenced. This is not a quick path, but it is a true one. The healing journey isn't about erasing your past or pretending it didn't happen. It's about changing your relationship to it. It's about recognizing that the child who learned to hide their feelings wasn't weak. They were wise. They found a way to survive. But survival strategies that work for children can become prison for adults. Healing means learning to hold both truths, that you needed those strategies then, and that you don't need them now. That you were once powerless, but you're not anymore. That you once had to earn love, but you don't anymore. That you once had to hide who you were, but you don't anymore. This is a work of reclaiming your wholeness, of integrating the parts of yourself that were exiled, of learning to love the aspects of yourself that were once rejected, of discovering that you are not broken, you are not flawed, you are not too much or not enough. You are exactly as you need to be, and you always have been. Every time you choose presence over perfection, honesty over performance, you are breaking the cycle. You are choosing yourself, not the mask, not the role, but the full human being beneath it. And this is where the real work begins, where you stop being a victim of your conditioning and start being the author of your own story. The path to freedom isn't about positive thinking or willpower. It's about developing the courage to feel what you've been avoiding, to say what you've been swallowing, to want what you've been denying. It's about learning to parent the parts of yourself that were never properly loved. It's about becoming the adult who can give your inner child what they always needed, unconditional acceptance. This journey will ask everything of you. It will ask you to disappoint people who prefer your mask to your truth. It will ask you to sit with the discomfort of being real in a world that rewards performance. It will ask you to risk being rejected for who you are rather than loved for who you pretend to be. But here's what you'll discover. The people who can't handle your authenticity were never your people anyway. You'll learn that your anger isn't destructive, it's protective. Your sensitivity isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your needs aren't selfish, they're human. Your voice isn't too much, it's been silenced for too long. Every part of you that was labeled as too much or not enough is actually the key to your wholeness. The lie begins to lose its power the moment you name it. The moment you recognize that the story you've been telling yourself about your worth was written by people who were wounded, not by truth. You don't need to earn your worth. You never did. You don't need to prove your value through achievement, service, or sacrifice. You are valuable because you exist. But naming the lie is only the beginning. The real work is learning to live as if it's not true. It's catching yourself in the old patterns and choosing differently. It's noticing when you're about to apologize for having needs and stopping yourself. It's recognizing when you're dimming your light to make others comfortable and choosing to shine anyway. This isn't about becoming selfish or inconsiderate. It's about becoming authentic. It's about honoring the truth of who you are while still being kind, loving, and connected to others. It's about creating relationships based on mutual respect rather than people-pleasing and manipulation. You'll discover that when you stop trying to be perfect, you become magnetic. When you stop hiding your struggles, you become relatable. When you stop pretending to have it all together, you become human. And humans connect with humans, not with masks. The journey back to yourself is not a destination, it's a daily practice. It's choosing to honor your feelings even when they're inconvenient. It's setting boundaries even when people don't like them. It's speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. It's showing up as yourself even when you're afraid of rejection. Jung believed that we don't heal in isolation. We heal in relationship, in community, in the brave act of letting others see us as we truly are. Your healing journey isn't just about you. It's about breaking generational patterns, modeling authenticity for others, and creating a world where children don't have to abandon themselves to be loved. This work requires patience with yourself. There will be days when you fall back into old patterns, when you catch yourself people-pleasing or hiding your truth. This isn't failure. It's part of the process. Healing isn't linear. It's not about never struggling again. It's about recognizing the struggle more quickly and choosing differently more often. As you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were exiled, you'll notice changes in every area of your life. Your relationships will become more authentic, even if some of them don't survive your transformation. Your work will become more aligned with your values, even if it means taking risks. Your self-talk will become more compassionate, even though the critical voice may never fully disappear. You'll start to trust your intuition again. You'll remember what you actually like, what you actually want, what actually matters to you. You'll discover that beneath all the noise of other people's expectations, there's a quiet voice that has always known who you are. That voice was never broken. It was just buried under layers of conditioning and fear. The process of individuation that Jung described isn't about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering who you've always been. It's about integrating the parts of yourself that were split off. It's about learning to love the whole of yourself, not just the parts that were deemed acceptable. This is sacred work. It's the work of reclaiming your birthright. It's the work of remembering that you were born whole, that you were born worthy, that you were born deserving of love. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. You are not too much. You are not enough. You are exactly as you need to be, and you always have been. The ugliest lie that made you believe as a child was that you needed to be different to be worthy of love. But you don't. You never did. You deserve to be whole, to be seen, to be loved for exactly who you are. The world needs your authenticity. It needs your unique perspective, your genuine heart, your real voice. It needs you to stop hiding and start shining. It needs you to stop performing and start being. Because when you have the courage to be yourself, you give others permission to do the same. This is how we heal the world, not through grand gestures or perfect solutions, but through the simple, radical act of being authentic, through refusing to live the lie anymore, through choosing wholeness over perfection, truth over performance, love over fear. Now, the invitation is simple but profound. Don't keep this lie buried inside you any longer. If something in this video cracked open a door you thought was sealed forever, if you recognize yourself in these patterns, if you felt that familiar ache of remembering who you were before you learned to be afraid, share it. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of this journey spoke to your soul. Your story might be the key that unlocks someone else's prison. Your courage to be vulnerable might give someone else permission to start their own journey back to themselves. Your healing matters. Your authenticity matters. You matter. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. The world needs your real voice, your genuine heart, your unmasked presence. Stop hiding. Stop pretending. Stop earning love you already deserve. You are enough. You always were. You always will be. The lie ends here. The truth begins now.